What if you could confidently build your next SaaS with Claude Code and MCPs without getting stuck? Today, I'll add more features to my YouTube SaaS tool like project management, analytics research, and AI-powered title and thumbnail generation using N8N as the backend. We'll explore plan mode in Claude Code, database design in Supabase, and how to recover from when AI makes mistakes, like using Git to find deleted code. If you're tired of just learning AI tools without seeing practical real-world applications, this video and channel are for you. This is part of a series where I'm launching a complete SaaS all the way to paid users. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is jump back over to GitHub. We're going to implement the database. So I've been powering all of the development through these GitHub issues using the MCP for GitHub and Supabase to build all these things out. The main thing to think about when you're building out all of these tables is, of course, we are building out specific tables to store information, right? So if we're gonna have a thumbnail generator and a title generator, we're gonna need a table that stores all of the titles that we generate and all of the thumbnails that we generate. And if we're doing YouTube research, we need a video table to store all of our YouTube research. We need generate titles, generate thumbnails, descriptions, chapters, intro scripts, metadata. So one of the tables we don't really have yet is these projects. So if we jump back over here, we first have to have a user table, and we set that up in our previous video with the user authentication. And then each user can create multiple projects, right? Because if you have a YouTube video that you want to create, that's a project, then we're going to do research inside that project. So if we have a video on X, we're going to do YouTube research on X, and that's going to produce a bunch of videos that are specific to this project that we're doing research on. Because if we want to generate thumbnails for this project, then we want to limit the videos that we search for to be related to this project. So we want to keep the videos linked to this project, and then this project is linked to users. So there's this whole concept of tables that you need to create that will store data, but they have relationships with each other. I'm going to just brainstorm with Claude Code and then allow it to come up with all of the definitions that we need to create, and then allow it to create all of the database tables that we need and all the relationships. And we'll just go back and forth until we get all of this ironed out. All right, so the next step in this project is we need to build out the database. I want you first to help me design the different database tables that we need to create and their relationships with each other. And then I'd like you to help me update issue 5 in GitHub with those definitions. And then once we've updated it, I would like to then execute the table creation in Supabase. And then once that's done, I'd like to come back to our app and actually hook up the basic functionality to use those tables. Let me know if you understand, and then we can take the next step. So now one thing it's going to try to do is it's going to try to move forward when I told it not to. I'm going to dictate new database table structures to you. I want you to brainstorm with me, and then we will update issue 5 together. So don't do anything yet. This is the fun part with AI, where it likes to get busy before we're ready. All right, so we already have the user table in the authentication for Supabase. So that's already built. And then we also have a user profile table, which is a supplement to that. That's fine. In the code, we have a place where people can create projects, although that page is nothing but a placeholder. There is no code to actually manage your projects or create a new project or go into a project. So the first thing that we need to do is develop a project table where we can create a new project. It should be able to have a title and a description, and there's also metadata related to that project as well, like a transcript that we'll use. So we can keep it basic for now, but we should create a project table and link that to the user authentication. And then from there, we need to be able to have a videos table, which we already have, but we might need to make some modifications. And that videos table, I'm just going to stop here so I can go over to my diagram here just to remind myself where we're at. So we need the projects table and the videos table. And then we need a channels table, and then also a content table where we can store titles and thumbnails. And remember, these videos are coming from YouTube research. So just for a little bit of context, if you don't remember, when I need to create a new YouTube video, I'm going to come in, I'm going to create a new project. And then from there, I'm going to do research on that video that I want to create. That's going to bring back a bunch of different videos. And then for each video, there's going to be a channel. So we need to be able to have a table that stores all of the different channels on YouTube. Once we have all this research, we're going to generate titles, thumbnails, descriptions for our YouTube video, and possibly chapters. I think I'm forgetting something. I just want to double check. So we're gonna create titles, thumbnails, descriptions, chapters. Oh yeah, and also intro scripts. All right, so that was a pain. I accidentally exited out of Claude Code, but I believe in Whisperflow, I have all of those transcripts, so I can just get all that back and start. These things happen, and I just want to show you how to navigate it. So I'm building out the database in Supabase, and I'm talking through the new structure that I want. Let's go ahead and brainstorm that, and then you can compile all that information, and then we can move from there. So we have that, and then I'm going to go back, and then we left off at the videos table. So on top of the videos table, we also need to keep track of all of the content that we need to create, which is titles and thumbnails and YouTube descriptions and chapters, and also an intro script. So we need to create a content table. Let's use one content table for all of those different types of content, and we can just tag them as what type of content they are. All of these pieces of content are going to have a content column. The only real difference between any of these is the thumbnail, which will have a URL of some sort. And we can sort out how we actually want to store that thumbnail a bit later. Take all this in and go ahead and describe back to me the structure for these tables, and we can go from there. Don't do anything until I have a chance to review. And make sure you outline the relationships between these tables as well. All right, so that's how we recover from exiting out of Claude and just coming back. It's actually pretty cool to have the Whisper flow. So when that happened, I could just copy and paste that stuff back in. All right, cool. So here's what we got based on our description, database schema overview, videos table already exists with modifications, content table, relationships. So let's keep it simple. And I want to point this out here because this is a term that you'll want to get used to, which is projects one-to-many, videos one-to-many. The relationship between these tables is there is a project that will have a one-to-many relationship with videos. For every project, it might have 100 different videos. Now, there is also a relationship called many to many, and we'll get into that as well. But for now, we'll keep it simple, where you can see that for one project, it will have a relationship to many videos. It does make sense. Let's go ahead and use the Supabase MCP to implement these tables. Let's also make sure they have row level security so that only the particular user is able to access those tables. And then from there, we'll go ahead and implement the code to create projects and create videos, and we'll build everything out and make any tweaks to the database as we need to as we go. Now I'm gonna go ahead and hit Shift Tab so it auto accepts everything, although it will continue to ask me when it's making specific calls to the MCP. I'm gonna go ahead and say yes, don't ask again. So now it's created the projects table. So let's come back and just check that out, see if it's there. Schema Analyzer. Refresh. All right, so here we have the projects now, and you're gonna see that it's gonna show you the relationships, which is pretty cool. Now, the overall approach that I'm taking here is just to get started, start building, start updating the code, and then as I come across just usability issues with the app itself, because there's all sorts of stuff that I'm thinking about. It's actually kind of overwhelming because there's so many different features and thoughts that I have around all of this. But what I'm trying to do is just build and get things connected, and then allowing myself to perfect things a bit later, because trying to think through everything ahead of time when you have so much power to just use AI to help you build, I find that it's better just to build and then just clean things up later. All right, so now it's creating the project's API route. It might actually be building out some functionality. I'm not actually sure. So I'll let it finish, and then we'll be able to clean things up as we need to. All right, so it has created the database tables, and it looks like it already did some code updates here, and it did some UI implementation as well, project listing page with real-time data. So it looks like it's actually pulling in real data already. Users can create and view projects already. Interesting. Let's see if that actually works. Come back to the terminal here. It looks like there was an error. That could have been an old error. I'm going to just see if the site is working. Okay, so we have an error now. So let's just fix that first. I'm just going to do a new build, npm run build. If we get a build error here, I'm just going to have Claude fix that. But it's pretty cool. Went ahead and updated the dummy data that we had and just updated the API and the UI. Having a few errors is not a big deal. And I did notice that it was installing a Sooner package, which I'm not exactly sure what that is, or replace it with an existing toast system. So that's something that I'm going to actually look at. I'm going to go to Claude Code. What is the Sooner Next.js package or the toast package. Could you tell me more about those? So while it's fixing that, I want to do a little bit of research so I understand. So somehow it's installing this toast notifications. So something about smooth animations, really not sure why it did that. So once I get back here, so it looks like we're having all sorts of issues here. And a lot of these issues might have come about because we were importing this from a different program that we built, and we've really been converting it from a application that was using Airtable into something that's using Supabase. It's making quite a few fundamental changes here. I always get a little nervous when it's doing that, when I feel like we were doing something pretty simple, but I'll be patient and work through it. We can always go back and work through it. That's the reason why I wanted to do this particular project, because you're not always going to be starting off from scratch. You might have built something and you want to convert it into something else. You're always going to be in a situation where the situation isn't perfect, and you have to learn how to navigate that. This isn't all just about how do you connect A, B, and C successfully every time. The real challenge here is how do you navigate all of these different challenges that you will face in a real project. And I am going to remember to ask it about Toast and why it was installing that, or how it's being used. So it says it was able to build successfully. So let's go ahead and run it ourselves. Okay. Now, before I test, I'm going to go ahead and say, what are we using the Sonar and Toast package for exactly? I'm curious. Please let me know why it was implemented and what it's being used for. I've also noticed that the UI has picked up this annoying underline on everything. I've seen that happen before. But let's just check out our actual app here, see if it's running. So back to projects, loading projects, no projects. Can we create a project? Project title, test, description, test, transcription, test, create project. Project. So that's an issue here. Looks like it's displaying the actual ID instead of the project name. Also here, this looks hard-coded. It's not the actual description, but that's fine. All right, so we have that here. Created, last modified, view project. Let's see if we can delete it. Cool. Let's create a new test project. So now let me update this. Let's see what it came back with on my question. Looking at the code base, Sonar is actually not being used. It was a mistake on my part when I initially created the project components. What happened? When I built the new project, I incorrectly imported and used Toast from Sonar. The problem with Sonar is not installed in your project. As we saw, this caused the build to fail. What Sonar Toast libraries are used for? Toast libraries like Sonar are typically used for global notifications that appear temporarily, which is actually something that we'd probably want. Your existing pattern, your codebase already has a consistent, well-designed error handling pattern using inline system. What I fixed, I replaced the Sonar Toast calls with your existing inline feedback pattern, which is actually better for your application because it's consistent with the existing UI. So it's good to know. So that's one of those things that as you go, you want to learn this stuff. What is Sonar? What is Toast? Maybe that's something that you might want later on. There are so many packages out there. It's insane. And there's all sorts of opinions on which ones to use. I don't really have an opinion, so I'm just going to stay with where I'm at. I want to get this live and make money. Maybe down the road, I might be interested in using that. Now let's fix this issue. On the project page, project ID, I'm noticing, forgot to dictate. I'm noticing that it is displaying the ID instead of the project title. And it's also displaying a hard-coded description instead of the description that's in the database. And then I will paste the code that I saw. It looks like the last modified is also hard-coded and the created date. If we could update all of that, that would be great so that it's actually using database functionality. So now what's funny is that I told it to fix this, but I wouldn't be surprised if it also tried to fix these as well. It just seems to have a habit of doing stuff like that. So now again, what I've noticed is that when people build out these SaaS apps, they start with nothing and they want to go all the way to a finished product with one prompt. They're not satisfied that they're taking what used to take 3 months and condensing it down to a day. They want to do it in 1 minute. So they want to try to build the whole app in one prompt. But what they don't realize is that just like that Toast and Sonar issue is that there's all these little libraries that are installed along the way. And if you're not curious, if you're not building and it puts in the wrong one, it could break everything. And that's why people have so many problems. So just be happy with this until AI gets a little bit better, maybe next week, and we can do this, okay? All right, so let's see. Created today, last modified just now. Cool. So I'm not sure if this is live data or not, but now we have the ability to create a project, delete a project, and we can move on. So now let's go ahead and build out the YouTube research section of this app. Now, the issue that I have here is that this functionality was built out before when I was using Airtable as the backend, and when this wasn't a full SaaS. It was just a tool that I made, and then I decided to make it into a SaaS, and then I started to build out all the SaaS components. But the search and the videos page were problematic because they were built in the old system, the old Next.js app. So I just rebuilt them and I deleted those pages. What I want to show you here is an attempt to get that back because I deleted it all, but it was in GitHub. So I want to show you something and I want to see how AI works through it myself. But one thing to understand about GitHub is that even though you might delete something, and this is what's really cool about it, is that everything is in here. So if you look at these commits here, here's the commit that we used to update to Supabase. And then here is where I updated the app. And this is where I deleted the YouTube research page. But that page is actually still here in this commit. So I can come here and I can grab this commit ID. And because I'm using the GitHub MCP, I can actually tell Claude Code to go look at that commit, go look at the YouTube research page, the form, and grab that part of the code that made a call to N8N. I'm going to ask it to go look at that code, pull just the search form and the call to N8N, and then let's rebuild that functionality in our new app. Okay, let's give this a go. I don't know that this is going to work, but I don't really want to build all that stuff out from scratch, although maybe that's a better way to do it. Sometimes you don't always know, but I have a feeling that getting that is a good idea. So I'm just going to explain that to Claude. I'm going to go ahead and paste the commit ID here, and then we'll see how this goes. All right, now I'm ready to implement the YouTube research page that was previously deleted in the last commit to GitHub because it was interfering with our current implementation of our Next.js app. So just so you understand, I originally built this Next.js app with Airtable, and then we re-implemented everything. And when I did that, the old pages were causing an issue with the authentication. So I just had you delete those pages. Well, I'm ready to re-implement the YouTube search that calls N8N, the backend, and I'd like to use some of that code. I don't want to copy the whole page, but I do want you to look back in Git, and I just pasted the commit ID. So you have that commit ID. You can reference that with the GitHub MCP. I'd like you to go look at the search page, pull in the form and the code that allowed us to call the N8N backend, because this particular search form is using an N8N webhook. It's not calling the Next.js app. So please reference this commit, go look at the search page, implement the functionality that calls the N8N backend. And then I believe what makes the most sense is to have the video page, which used to be on a different page, on the same page just below the search. So I believe what we'll do is we'll have the search, and when we make a successful search, we'll just display the videos below. Let's go ahead and first look at the commit, do the research, make sure you understand what I'm talking about. Please ask me any questions that you have before you do anything. Do not just start doing anything. Clarify what I'm trying to say if you have questions. Look at the implementation, come up with any issues that you might foresee, and then let's go ahead and implement from there. So come up with that plan, ask me questions, and we'll go from there. Super curious to see how this goes. I'm going to turn auto accept edits off at this point. Actually, what I just did is I went into plan mode on. So when you hit Shift Tab, it goes through these different modes. So this is the normal mode where it's going to ask you everything. Auto accept is where it just starts modifying your files without you having to do anything. Plan mode is where you're just planning. So this actually is probably better to just do plan mode. So it thinks it needs to go back a little bit further. I'm fine with that. Seems to be trying to go back further and further. All right, so here's the research that it did. Perfect, I now have a clear understanding of the original implementation. Let me present my research findings. So I found the original YouTube search. And so now you see the power of Git, right? Or at least you see one of the powers of Git. Original search firm, basic search, advanced search with toggle, direct N8N webhook, user redirect, original video display, table format. Now there's a special table that I want to use, but I'm going to let it finish this before I complicate things. Key technical details, client side form with use state for search parameters, fetch, which calls the N8N directly, constants. Plan to implement YouTube research page. Questions before I implement. 1. Should this go to the project research page or create a new dedicated search page? The search is the research page. So I'm going to go ahead and no, keep planning. So let's go over these questions. So number one, I'm going to go ahead and say, no, the research is the new search page. So on the research page, this is going to have the search. And I believe it's best just to put the videos below that show us all the videos that we've found in our research. Let me know if you think that that is a bad idea. So now I'll go back up to 2. For project associated, when someone searches within a project, should the webhook automatically include the project ID so the projects get linked to the project? Yes. So we're going to have to send that in the payload. So basically what it's saying is before there was no concept of a project. So when I sent it over to N8N, we didn't have any concept of a project ID. So when we save the videos to Supabase, we need to have that project ID. Yes, when we do the research and you send the webhook or the HTTP call to N8N, we should send the project ID or any information that we need to store for those videos so that we can create those rows with that project ID. So we'll add that. Video display location. You mentioned showing the videos on the search page. Should I create a combined search and results component or keep them separate? So on this research page where we have the search and the videos, I would like your opinion on that. I want it to look nice and be a simple interface. So if they should be a combined unit, that's fine. I'd like to know what you think is best there. Give me your suggestions before you move on. Let's stay in planning mode until we're done. All right, let's go to the other question. Constants file. The original had a constants file with all the search options. Should I recreate this or simplify the options? For the constants file, I'm not really sure. You tell me, like, why are you suggesting that? What do you think we should do? Is there an advantage to your suggestion or should we just keep it the way it is? You tell me. Let's figure that out before we move on. So sometimes it just starts asking you questions and you might not even know. And so it's just best to ask it. Authentication. The current API search route uses the create authenticate route. Should the new search form also be behind authentication? So the new search form is on the research page. Projects, ID, research. So we're not creating a new page. If we're calling a backend route API, that should be protected. And I'm inclined to create a new one using our new structure versus trying to reuse the one that we already have. The one that we had before, the search page, the video page, they had problems. So I want all of the new pages or routes that we create to be brand new on our end and should follow any new conventions. So we have this new format for projects and the ID and the research. And so if there's this backend route that we need to call N8N, we should recreate that with the authentication in place that also calls N8N the same way the old one did, except that we're passing any relevant information like the project ID and that type of thing. So was that all of them? I think that was it. So user rejected the plan. So take all that in and the plan that you proposed and come back with the revised plan given what we just talked about, and then let me review it and then we can move forward. There's definitely like frustrations that I go through in this process and I go down paths that I have to come back from and fix, but it's definitely easier than some of the experiences I've had with actual human developers. So it's not error-free, but it's not so bad. Clarifications, let me address your questions and provide a revised plan. Combined search. I think combining them is the best approach for a research page. That's fine. Constants file, why I recommend it. Looking at the original data, there are 57 total options. Advantages of a constants file: cleaner, maintainable, type safety, reusable, professional. Alternative, we could inline them, but with 57 options, the component would be very cluttered. My recommendation, create the constants file for cleaner, more maintainable code. UI structure. So this is what we're going to have the search form and then the video results down below. So you want to make sure you review the plan before you move forward. So now it wants to know, can it move out of planning mode and go into auto accept edits? And I'm going to go ahead and just say yes. Now I suspect there are going to be some issues, but we'll see. Sometimes I'm quite surprised how much work it will do with almost no issues at all. I keep saying this in all my videos with the vibe coding stuff. Use AI to help you build this stuff, guys, but learn all of these different things. Take breaks, jump over to Claude. If you don't understand something over here, learn, ask it. Go deeper on things. Those insights will make you better at what you're doing. I'm able to build these things as is better than a lot of people just because I know more of the baseline language and things to say and things to look out for. So as you go and you don't understand things, dig deeper, learn. It's just amazing. Look, it's almost done here. So now I'm going to just, while it's working on that, I'm going to double check. We have our env variable where we have our search webhook here. So the first thing I'm going to do is just take a look at the UI and our build here. It looks like we do have some issues. This is usually a cache issue. So I'm just going to show it this. It'll fix that cache issue. Anytime you see that .next, so it's going to clear the cache. So I just want to check out the UI, and then we're going to have to do a little bit of legwork just to make sure that the N8N works. And I'll have to make adjustments to the search page and adjust this to add to Supabase instead, because I forgot to save this the last time around. So it's still pointing to Airtable. So I always like to run this myself. And I also have 2 versions of this. So I want to make sure this is CDF. Okay, it is this one. Perfect. Let's take a look at the UI. Super curious to see how this looks. So here's our new research page. Click. YouTube research failed to fetch videos. Not sure why we're getting that error, but this looks cool. It looks right. So I'm super curious about why it's showing that failed to fetch videos, but I'm just going to allow that to be there. And what I want to test is whether this webhook is working correctly. So let's test that first. Let's just search for N8N. Let's see if we have a call coming to the backend here. It is running. There's going to be an error, I know for sure. There should have been. It's just writing that same information to Airtable. So we need to fix that. So actually it worked, but it didn't produce any data. So failed to fetch videos. That's probably why it's coming with that. So let's see what we got here. So here's the query N8N and the user ID and the project. So we need to add that to the videos table. Actually, this is pretty successful, to be honest with you. So what I'm going to do is I'm in production mode now. So this is an actual execution, but what you can do is you can use this feature here, copy to editor. And that way we can modify the query here and we can swap out Airtable Supabase to add the data. Supabase, create a new row. I already created a connection earlier. YouTube researcher. I believe this is the one. Error fetching options from Supabase. So maybe not. Let's just see if one of these other connections works. Okay, this is the one. Supabase account. Let's rename it so we don't lose it next time. And let me just double check just to make sure this is CL project CL. Okay, cool. Thumbnail magic. Save. I'm going to add to videos. Now we've got to add all these fields. Wish I had saved it earlier, but it is what it is. Title, thumbnail, use the max res thumbnail, channel, let's keep track of that. I do need to come back to this as well and do a channel search, but I will leave that for another time. Channel ID, views, just gonna do a search here, speed it up. I'm looking for views now, view count. Next up, duration, noticing this 33S. Not exactly sure what that means. We'll worry about that later. Okay, we got publish date, that's published at. Noticing that's a string. We can correct some of these things later. There's a lot of fine tuning to do to this before we go live. Video URL, we can construct that with the video ID. I'm gonna leave that created at. Now user ID, that's gonna come from the webhook. User ID and the project ID. So that should be good. I'm going to execute this step, see if it works. Your request is invalid or could not be processed. Duplicate key. So what this is saying is that there's a restriction on the database in that it will not allow the same YouTube video to be in the database with the same video ID, which is a mistake in this case because different projects might have the same video ID. So we should disable this, okay? So now I could have Claude Code do it for me. In fact, let's just try that out. But you could also do this in Supabase as well. So we could come here, we could go to database, videos, tables, videos, edit table. And I'm assuming video ID here is unique. When this table was created, again, they didn't want the same YouTube video to be in this table. And there's good reason for that. But in this case, I don't think we need that. I can come in here and just do that. And then I could save it. I could have just gone to Claude Code as well. I could have copied and pasted that error message here. And I could say, hey, make sure that we can add multiple videos of the same type in here. And it would have gone using the MCP and it would have fixed it. So there we go. Cool. So that works. So now I can delete the Airtable node here. And now I'm going to remember to save this time. So now let's just run this again. Okay, we're getting failed to fetch videos. Let's go to the executions. So this just ran. It didn't have any issues, but for some reason it thinks it's failing, okay? So let's come back here. I'm just gonna open up the console and I'm gonna run this again, see if there's anything in here that we see that we can pass. I am going to come here and grab the actual response that we're sending. So we're sending this response here, and I'm just going to tell Claude Code what's going on. All right, so the new changes, the search is calling N8N, and N8N is running successfully, and it is inserting the new videos, and it is also responding with the message success, which I will paste into the console here, or the message for you. But the UI is saying failed to fetch videos. And what's also interesting is that it's also saying that when I load the page itself. So there's still an issue with getting the response and displaying the videos properly. So I'll put that in there. Before I hit enter, I'm going to jump over to the database here and just look at our videos table. So here's all of the new videos that we have with the user ID and the project ID. So that's good. So these other ones here were from a previous run. They shouldn't hurt anything. Let's go ahead and let Claude Code know what's happening. Again, like it's using an old API. So it looks like it's creating the new code because that's what we wanted, right? We don't want to use the old code, the old pages. In fact, we're going to want to come back and delete those. So I'm going to make a little note here. Go ahead and accept. All right, so let's see if this is actually fixed. It says it is. Today has been relatively easy. I shouldn't say that. Now we're going to have a bunch of issues. All right, now, yeah, so we have an issue right now. Sometimes it doesn't actually do the build. So we have build issues. Actually, this is a cache issue. I think it is actually. Let's do an npm run build. So this is a warning. It's not an error. So it's just a cache issue. All right, let's refresh. Nice. There's the videos. Very cool. So it's working. So I can type faceless, N8N, search, 17 videos. Interesting. Very cool. It automatically updated. So this is a little crowded for this view here, but that's fine. Thumbnail, title, channel. So there's definitely a little bit of work to do here, but let's see if the delete works. Video deleted, did it? It's not asking a confirmation. Now I am noticing that notification was right here, which to me was a little bit awkward. It pushed the UI down. I kind of like the UI when you do something where it like pops up down here in like the bottom left. So I might take a little bit of a sidetrack to ask about that right now before it becomes like a standard, because what's going to happen is that's going to become something that just is used over and over again. And also this table here, there's a better table that I want to use for this. There is a library here called MUIX data grid, and we don't need the full power of this right now, but it's a library that is specialized in tables. So there's all this kind of functionality like select all and like managing the sort order and what columns are shown. And it's pretty cool. And even though we don't need all this power now, look, you can even add a filter. Even though we don't need this power now, better to install it now. So I'm going to take a little break and go off on a little tangent here and solve these two issues, the notifications and then also this MUIX data grid. Or at least I'm going to do a little bit of research on the notifications first. I'm going to definitely do the table. So I noticed something when I deleted a row, which worked, but it popped up a notification right above the table and it pushed the table down and then the notification disappeared a couple seconds later. I would like to understand if there is a library or a custom solution we're using for notifications like that right now. We were discussing Sonar and Toast earlier. Do we have a system for notifications? Because I think it's better for the user if those notifications are like a pop-up that comes down in the lower left-hand portion of the screen. It's much more visible. It doesn't mess with the UI. Can you tell me a little bit about how we're doing notifications? Is there a unified system yet? What do you recommend for putting something in place now so that we have it and we have a unified way of doing notifications that always show up in the same spot? And when we add new functionality, they will all use that same thing. So I'm going to go back into plan mode just so it doesn't go down a rabbit hole and start changing things before we do it. And actually, I'm going to say, please make sure to discuss with me the options and the plan first before we implement anything. So I just use my best judgment to figure out whether I go down a path to fix something, like fixing the notifications. Sometimes I'll defer on those things and I'll come back to them later. In this case, it feels like a central part to the application, and solving it now is something that is probably a good idea. Came back, great observation. You're seeing an inline notification system that I implemented, which is indeed disruptive to the UI. Let me analyze the current notification system, what you saw, current patterns and code base. Looking at there are 3 different notification patterns, but no unified system. So again, I just noticed something. There's like 3 different ways that it's doing stuff right now. Recommended solution, Sonar Toast system. Why Sonar? Lightweight, excellent TypeScript support, customized, promise bias, auto dismiss, stacking, accessible, popular. Features, simple usage. So this is kind of cool. So you can just use it and display a message, or you can also set it up so that you can basically call one of your functions that you're doing, and then when it's done, it'll actually show that message based off of the actual error or success. So that's kind of cool. So we could have this here where it's saying deleting video, and then it could say successful or failed. Phase 1, add Sonner. Phase 2, create unified API. Phase 3, replace existing patterns. Questions for you. Do you prefer Sonner, or would you like to consider other options? Well, it seems like this is a pretty good option. Position preference, bottom left, as you mentioned, or would you consider bottom right, more common? I'm not sure I really care. Styling, should the toast match your existing style? Migration approach, replace all existing inline notifications at once or gradually phase them out. Auto dismiss timing, how should successors, how long? Okay. So for the migration, I'm only going to fix this one because I don't want to go, I don't know how many there are. When I see other notifications, we'll just replace them as we go. But before I do anything here, I'm definitely going to come back to Git. I'm going to open up a new terminal and commit what we have. So this is a good spot to Git status. Let's see all these changes that we've got. It's good to commit all this now. So if we make a mistake or this Sonner thing becomes this massive project that we didn't expect, so we can just roll back to where we are right now and continue forward and come back later. So I'm going to do a git add star. By the way, using git add star is totally bad practice. And the reason for that is you can end up adding things in that you didn't mean to. To be honest, I'm just being a little lazy right now. So I'm just going to do that. Git status. I'm just going to make sure I'm not committing anything that I shouldn't. This is all stuff that we do need to add. I'm kind of curious what that server log is. That is something that we don't want to add in. So git status. So I want to remove this server log. I'm actually blanking on the command to pull that out of the commit. So I'm just going to jump over to Claude Code. I'm going to open up a new one so I don't mess up this here. Remind me how to remove a file that I added to Git before a commit. I added and want to remove it before I make the final commit. So Claude can do all of your work as well. So git, that's right. So did it run it? Or did it just tell me? So git status, now that's going to be back. Okay, cool. So now we can git commit before Sonner toast update. So now we've got that there, which is good. So now I'm going to just dictate my answers to these questions here. It sounds like Sonner is the best option. I'm okay with that if you think that's the best option. Position preference, if bottom right is more common, let's go with bottom right. Styling, should toast match your existing design? Yeah, we can go ahead and just use our existing design. Migration approach, let's only replace this delete notification. And as we run up against additional notifications, we'll address them one by one to keep this simple. And auto dismiss timing, how long should success or error messages stay visible? Maybe just 1 second. Ideally, that's something that we can change easily. And the one thing that I did see here was they had the simple usage and the promise-based. One more question before we go. Do we think we should use the simple or promise-based approach? I want to keep this simple to start, but if doing the promise-based method is easy and it's better, we could do that. Just let me know what you think. Take all this in and let me know what we should do, revise the plan. Ask me any questions, and then we'll move forward. Perfect. Your preferences make sense. Let me address the simple versus promise-based. Let me address the simple versus promise. So simple, promise-based. My recommendation, promise-based. Why promise-based is actually better and not much more complex. Okay. All right, let's go. I hope you're having fun. I am. This is where you cross your fingers and you hope that it didn't change so much that now it's going to run into all these errors and rebuild the whole app for you. I will say I've been totally blown away with how well it does work. I mean, we're doing weeks and weeks worth of work in an hour here. I've been recording for 30 minutes and the amount of work we've done is insane. Now, one thing I would also mention as well is like, if you have that perfectionist tendency where you want everything to be perfect and you want it to scale infinitely, I think you should learn to put that aside because you will, no matter how well you plan, you will always end up rebuilding your apps. It's just a guarantee. You'll have to rebuild some things. Allow yourself to just build, get things to the market, get some users, get some money coming in. It's going to feel way better than trying to obsess about everything being perfect. All right, so it says it finished everything. Let's just double check and make sure we can run the build. All right, now let's run the page here. All right, now let's do a delete and see what that looks like. Deleting video, nice, super cool. All right, so the next thing I want to do then is I want to convert this table into this library here so that we have this cool data format. We have pagination built in, all sorts of good stuff. You can control what fields are shown. You can see this hide column so people can customize it. I'm just going to grab this here. I've tried this before, it works pretty well. I'll go ahead and just commit everything again. So now this server log, that definitely shouldn't be in your Git repository. So one thing I'm also going to do is I'm going to come over to our git ignore, and I'm just going to add server log because that shouldn't be here. And now watch what will happen. If I do a git status, it's still there. Probably didn't save it. I think we'll have to add the git ignore before it respects that. So I'm going to be a little more careful this time through. I'm going to add .git ignore package. I don't think you're supposed to commit that lock either, but I'm not going to obsess. I'm just going to move forward and clean up some of these things later. But here I'm going to do it file by file. You can also ask Claude Code to help you out with these kind of things. So add these files in, added notifications, git status. Okay. I'm just going to ask Claude Code. Quick question. I added the server.log to the .git ignore, but it's still showing up as a changed file when I do a git status. Can you let me know what's going on there? So it was already tracked. That's why. It was already added. Probably when I did a git add star before. So it's just going to fix that for us. While I'm here, I had this other question about the lock file. Let's ask about that too. What about the package lock file? Should that be in the Git repo as well, or should that not be? Yes, package lock should absolutely be committed. Okay, so that should be perfect. So we're good. So now git status. Now we're not seeing the server lock. Perfect. So we can go ahead and close this and move on. Okay, now another change that I'd like to implement going forward is using a specialized table library called the MUIX grid. I'm going to give you the URL here as well so that you have that. I would like you to take a look at the application and this library and then help us come up with a good plan for implementing that. And the first place we'll implement that here is on the video research page. So take a look at the library, come up with the plan. Let me know if there's any issues. I know we're dynamically loading that page there. So let me know if you see any issues, come up with a plan, and then after that, we'll go ahead and execute it, and then we'll make any final tweaks that we need to implement that. So we got that, and then I'm going to paste in the link, and then I'm going to switch back to plan mode on. Make sure not to proceed with any changes until I answer all your questions and we approve the plan. Current state analysis, current table, compatibility, implementation plan, potential issues and migrations, CSS framework conflict, issue. MUI uses emotion-styled components versus our Tailwind solution. Configure MUI theme to use CSS variable that allows with Tailwind tokens, bundle size. So this is why I like coming up with these plans and coming up with these issues. I do want this table in there, but I don't know that it's that critical. It's going to open up a can of worms potentially, and it's going to add some size to this. So I think I'm going to delay this. I'm going to ask a couple extra questions here. Using the Shade CN library, are we able to do pagination and sorting, those types of things with these tables very easily? The main thing that I want to be able to do is sort, but I'm not sure we should necessarily really try to squeeze this in, because even though I really like this, I don't know that we have to have these functionalities. It's just a nice to have. I would rather get this live, get users, than go down this path if we don't need it. Again, what I'm trying to show you guys here is kind of how to make decisions about these things, trying to give you a way to make decisions and not get yourself in trouble. So based on my research, here's what I found about Shade UI capabilities. Yes, pagination and sorting are possible with important caveats, not built in out of the box. So it gives us a comparison here. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it as is. I'm not going to make any changes, and I'm going to come back and do that later. So even though I know I'm going to end up coming back here and I'll probably end up spending more time doing the conversion a little bit later because we'll have more work to do, I think it's better to stay focused on getting these items finished out before going down some other big rabbit hole. So now we need to get the generate titles and the generate thumbnail pages working. All right, so I'm just going to come back to Claude Code and just dictate the next set of instructions, and also remind it that old functionality again was on those video pages. So it will have to look back in the commits using the GitHub MCP to find that functionality. We'll have it build out these pages. It also needs to store the titles and thumbnails because it didn't do that before. So let's do the titles first, and then we'll do the thumbnails after that. All right, so now I would like to re-implement the generate titles functionality. Do remember that the API call that also called N8N was also on the videos page before. So we need to move that functionality to our new page, and you'll need to use the GitHub repository MCP to look back at the videos page to see that call to N8N. And then also remember that previously we did not save those entries to the database. N8N would return the titles, and then we would then just display those on the screen. But now we need to actually load those into Supabase and display those titles on that page. So when we go to generate titles, we should have the same form that we had before. It was basically asking for a description of the video. Although in this case, we should be using the description that we put into the project settings, and then we asked for any special instructions. So on that page, we should have that form, and then below it, similar to the research page, we should have a table of all the titles that we've generated. So first, I'd like you to come up with that plan or do the research that you need to do. Go into GitHub, the MCP, look at the old videos page for generate titles, and then come back with the plan and any questions that you have for me, and then we'll go ahead and implement them. So one thing I am going to do while this is going is I'm going to go take a look at Supabase, and I just want to look at the content table. So we have a content type here. Cool. So this is how we determine what type of content it is. So here we have title, thumbnail, description, chapters, and intro script. It's not remembering that it was in a previous commit. So I'm going to jump back to GitHub and let it know because it was back here. So I'm going to grab this commit ID here. It's trying to search the code. Actually, it's going to go look at the commits as well. So I'm just going to give it some help. I see you were trying to search the code. It's not in the code that's in the current main branch. You're going to need to not revert, but you're going to need to look at an older commit. And here's the commit ID I suggest. I think one of the things that I really like about AI development is that it never gets tired. So it did a mistake here. It tried to look up a file. I'm not sure why it's having an issue. It didn't have an issue last time. Just to reiterate, you might want to look in our history of this conversation. The commit that I gave you is the one where you were able to find the code before. You might also look in the history just to see how you did the search the last time, because it looks like you're going about it a different way this time, and the last time was successful. Again, I'll give you the commit hash where I believe you will find at least the code that has the old videos page in it. So the last time it was doing this, it was just actually looking at the local Git instead of trying to use the MCP, because it has access to this directory. So there's no reason why it even needs to use the MCP. So there we go. So now it's finding it. Perfect. So I guess this is the key, guys. We're using AI, but you want to pay attention. You want to see when it's doing things differently than it did before, so you can stop it, remind it. We've also seen an example where it was trying to do something with the Sonner and the Toast application or package that I noticed, and I was like, why are you using that? You shouldn't be using that right now. And then it didn't. But that gave me the idea to go research it. I learned what it was, and then we actually implemented it. So that was pretty cool. Based on my research, I can see the API code, generate titles plan. I found the original code, modal-based UI, new implementation, database schema updates, phase 2 API routes, follows new pattern, create project titles component, combine form plus results table, similar pattern to the result, enhance features. Then it's going to give us the key differences. Looks good. And also, just while I'm thinking here, one thing I'm going to take a note of is that I am remembering here in N8N, which was probably a mistake, the generate titles and the generate thumbnail assets, they respond with the actual data. So this one doesn't write anything to Supabase or Airtable. It just responded with the titles, and then the application could do what it wants with it. For the YouTube search, I'm actually writing the rows here. But in reality, what I should probably do is allow the application to save all the data, and I should just respond with the actual video data. Ultimately, these will be replaced completely into our app. We'll absorb all of that. We'll do that in a future video. But I think using N8N for your backend on these kind of functions is actually pretty handy, because you can build these things out pretty quickly. Whereas if you tried to build this out in code, it would take a bit of time. So I'm pretty confident I'll be able to take this JSON, export it, download it, export it, put it into Claude Code, say, hey, I need to re-implement this into code on the Next.js server. But like doing some of these authentications with like the Google Auth and all that stuff, it's a bit of a pain. So this is perfectly fine for rolling things out. I'm always surprised just how fast it goes through and does all this work. Just trying to do the builds, coming up with errors. It's just going to fix them. Now, one thing I'm not sure about is I'm not sure if this is the new toast functionality. This looks like the old notify. So I'm going to double check that. I'll get the functionality working first. Let's see if it works. How are we doing over here? Looks like we might have an issue. I'm not sure if that happened previously. So I'm just going to rerun this, see if we have the same error. So maybe not. All right, let's see. Refresh the page. So there's our generate titles, and it has our description in here. Advanced options, special instructions, optional. Cool. Let's just see what it happens. Jump over to N8N. Are we seeing anything come through? There it is. Let's see what it sent over. Action, generate titles, video description, special instructions, none, project ID, user ID. It passed these, but we don't really need them. We're not using them. Responded with titles. And then, wow, look at that. Bam. Cool. It worked. So there's definitely things that I want to change. So let's see, deleting title, copy. So then we should be able to paste that. That is so cool. So pretty awesome here. So now generate thumbnails. Let's think about this. So generate thumbnails. How would this work? So what we really need to be able to see is we have our YouTube search. So this shows us all of our videos, but what we're going to want on generate thumbnails is probably a grid of all of our research. And then if we click on one, we should be able to generate a new one using the old form. And then we should have a library of the ones that we created. Might get a little cluttered. Let's do it that way right now. Because if we generate the thumbnails, just trying to think of like, there's going to be a lot here. It's almost like we should have two different pages. But let's just build this out and see how it looks. And then we can do some UI later. In fact, we could probably use Claude Code to come up with some examples. All right, now we need to do a very similar update to the generate thumbnails. We had previous functionality. Make sure you use GitHub, the local version, to go back to the previous commit and look at the form on the videos page. The way it worked before is you would click on a thumbnail on the videos page and then it would pop up that thumbnail and then you could make a request and it would send it to N8N. N8N would do the backend work and it would send back the new image. So now we need to first go and get that functionality and bring that back. But there's some UI changes that we need to make. So previously we did that from the videos page. In this case, we're doing it from the generate thumbnails. So the UI should look a little bit different. When you go to the generate thumbnails page, we should just see a grid, and I'm not sure how many we should show on each row, maybe 3 to 4. We should show a grid of all of the research thumbnails. And then if you click on one, then it should allow us to generate a new one. And then below that, we should have all of the thumbnails that we have generated from the thumbnails above. So go ahead and take in all this, go do the research, find the form, find the N8N web call, redesign the UI based off of what we just said, put all the thumbnails in a grid, and then make the call and then load those up down below in a different box in a component. Now make sure to think it through carefully, ask me any questions before you move on. And I'm gonna go back into plan mode. Hopefully it's just as smooth as the generate thumbnails were. All right, so we got a plan. Let's see here. Found the original implementation. Awesome UI flow, modal opens, new plan, got our new routes, UI components, research thumbnail source, generate thumbnail, generated thumbnails below. This looks perfect. Let's do it. Alrighty, it says it's done. Let's check it out. Interesting. Okay, we're not seeing the actual thumbnail. Oop, we got an error here. So this is a cache issue. Again, I like to run this myself. So I'm not actually seeing the thumbnails, which is kind of interesting. Selected thumbnail. Okay, that's fine. So that's one bug. Why is it? That is super weird. Oh, it looks like it's showing the same. That's probably because there's multiple videos. Okay. So if you notice here, guys, it's selecting 3. And it's doing that because it's the same video. So that means, remember when we turned off the unique? So the same video is in here multiple times, which is not an issue, but it shouldn't double them up here. So when it does the query to get the thumbnails, it should do a unique on the query so that it doesn't bring back multiples. And then we should also fix it so that we can actually see the thumbnail. So let's fix that first. So it's working okay. A couple of issues that I found. When we query the database for thumbnails, because we have multiple videos with the same video ID, when I select a thumbnail, it's selecting that thumbnail multiple times. So when we do our query to Supabase, let's make sure we get a unique rows and we can sort by the most latest so that we're getting the most recent video ID. But let's do a unique select on the video ID so that we don't get back multiple. Another issue that I found is that in the research, it's not showing the thumbnail. Now in the selected thumbnail below it is, but it's not showing that above. So we need to fix those two issues. All right, so it says it was able to fix it. Let's do a refresh here. Okay, we got an error. My guess is the build isn't working. We also got maybe a cache issue. We're having an internal error. Can you make sure the build is actually working and then also clear the cache and let me know when I can run the npm run dev again? All right, so we're still not seeing the thumbnail, although we got rid of the duplicates. It's just interesting that it shows them. Let's test the functionality. Analyze this thumbnail text and create a new image with similar text. Now, usually I'm using fal.ai and it's not really that great with text, so I'm not sure what to expect, but I'm just trying to see how this works. Let's go over to N8N, see if this is actually running. I made a call. Okay, it responded. All right, there we go. Okay, so not exactly what I wanted, but it worked. Copy URL, that's cool. And if I refresh, we'll have that there. Cool. So the only issue now is that when it's displaying these, it's not showing the actual thumbnail. And it's also putting this title and I guess the channel ID on there, which I don't think we need as an overlay. All right, so the generate thumbnail functionality worked. However, the thumbnails in the research displayed up above are still not showing the actual thumbnail. My guess is that there's something pretty basic going on here. So I'd like you to do some research and look into that. I also noticed that there's some overlays. The title of the video is on there, and also I think maybe the channel ID. We don't need the channel ID on there. If there's something related to maybe the selector or the overlays that might be covering up the thumbnail, that could be it as well. So I'm just helping you brainstorm. But I'd like you to just look at the code and see if you can see why this is happening. And actually, before that happens, I'm going to jump over here. I'm going to go into the debug mode. I'm going to just look at one of these elements here to see if we can see if the thumbnail is there. Maybe it's just hidden. Do we see an image URL somewhere? I don't see it. But for those of you that don't know what I'm doing here, I just hit F12. It brings up this console log that allows you to look inside the actual HTML. You can select different things. So I was just trying to see if maybe I could see a image URL here. I don't. Although it mentioned it added some debugging data, didn't it? It did. So this is that debugging data that it added on its own. So let's see if those are there. So they are there. So I'm going to give it back that debugging data. It does look like you have the thumbnail there. So my guess is it's just being covered up. Here is the console log data that you had. So when you're working with the UI, especially, you definitely want to investigate on your own. Go into the console, be aware, be present here with the UI, work with it, and you'll get further. All right, let's do a refresh. Probably a cache issue. I'm still curious why we have to do this every time. Seems like there's something not right about that, but I'm not going to get distracted by that. That is something I'll clean up and ask it. Why is this always happening over and over again? That doesn't seem like something that we should have to deal with, but it is. So one thing at a time. And what's funny is it also wants to run this, and it didn't run that other times. It only ran this before, and now it's doing all of these different things. So I'm not going to run this, and let's just see if it's okay now. Refresh. Nope, still not working. And I'm not seeing our debug data down here. All right, well, that was unfortunate. So I just exited out of Claude. I'm just going to come and cut and paste this because we just lost all of the context of what we were doing. I believe there's actually a way you can find the old session and go back, but I'm not going to figure that out now. But I think you can load up old sessions and start where you were, but oh man. But this is what we're dealing with, folks. So let's just fix it. All right, I'm having an issue. I just pasted in some text from a previous conversation. I accidentally closed Claude, so you don't remember where I'm at, but I just pasted the conversation we were having on the thumbnail, on the generate thumbnail page. It is not showing the thumbnail on the research portion of it. If I select a thumbnail, it is showing that below, but you just made a fix and it's not working. And I will notice this as well, and this is something that I noticed as well, is that debug code that was there is no longer there. So take a look at the thumbnail the generate thumbnail page and help me debug why those thumbnails are not showing up properly. Who knows, maybe starting off fresh will be a good thing. I'm just gonna restart this myself here. All right, so here's some debugging code. I'll expand these things so I can copy and paste it. So again, the debugging data looks fine. Looks like it's finding the thumbnails, but they're not being displayed. What I'm actually seeing is, I'm seeing the thumbnail box, but it's blank, it's black. And again, I can select it and the thumbnail does show up below under the selected thumbnail, and then it turns blue. My guess is that you're putting some sort of layers on top of the thumbnail so that isn't transparent or something like that. So I'm just trying to give it some ideas. All right, so let's see if it made any updates that are, perfect. Nice. All right, so now we have the generate titles and generate thumbnails working. We've got generate descriptions left, generate chapters, generate intro script, project metadata to complete. I'm gonna jump over to GitHub here, look at the issues. So this was phase 4, issue 5. Could you go ahead and close out issue 5 for this particular phase in GitHub using the MCP? And then let's go ahead and create additional issues for generate description, generate chapters, generate intro scripts, and the project metadata, and also the data library, and then also the settings on the main page. Let's jump over to GitHub and see what's happening over here. Phase 4 is gone. Now we've got a couple of issues that I had created before, just things that I realized that we need to do, a security review, some old console logs that we need to remove, protect the N8N webhook so that not just anybody that can call it. Now it's generate the description feature. It marked it as an enhancement. Let's get the other ones in here as well. All right, cool. It looks like it's completed, and here they are. So if you're enjoying these videos, make sure to like and subscribe and come on back, because I'm gonna build out the rest of this entire application all the way through to adding the payment plan, allowing people to subscribe, and then I'm gonna launch it, and then I'm gonna build out the entire marketing plan, and you're gonna see how I actually monetize this app. And also make sure to jump into the Vibe Encoders community. It's a thriving group. Inside the community, I have a SaaS framework that you can just download and install so that you don't have to build out all of this same infrastructure, even though you should know how to do it. I'm going to be building out a full classroom, and we have support calls as well. And since we're early, we do have a special price, so make sure to take advantage of that right now. I'd love to see you inside the community. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you on the next one.